right, so I know you all have been seeing the, tons of different pictures and advertisements and stuff like that all over social media here recently for the new Rasasi Hawas fragrances. And so I do have the two fragrances here. And these are Rasasi Hawas Kobra as well as Rasasi Hawas Malibu. All right. So Cobra, this one is Rasasi's take on Louis Vuitton's Imagination. And then the Malibu, this one is their take on, I believe, Jean Paul Gaultier's Le Beau, Le Parfum. So we're going to be going over these fragrances. I'm going to be giving sort of like my initial thoughts on these. I'm getting pretty, I guess you could say, fatigued of the Hawas line. So we'll go over why here in just a moment. All right. Now, as for the presentation for both of these, you're getting the same, standard presentation basically that you get with any other sort of Hawas fragrance. Basically the actual box itself, that kind of gives you a good idea of how the bottle is going to look or what sort of color scheme it has. So Cobra is like this sort of black and white kind of grayish, sort of color scheme, gray and silver, I guess you could kind of say. Whereas the Malibu is like a turquoise and gold sort of color scheme. So they're going to open up the exact same way. They have the same markings and everything like that any other Hawas bottle will have. So you got an authenticity sticker on the side there, nothing on this side. Yeah, you've got the Rasasi on the back here. Both of these are 100 ml bottles. Then you've got the ingredients and manufacture date, stuff like that on the bottom. Are both of these manufactured at the same time? Yes, I mean, it looks like both of these were manufactured in August of 2025. All right. Now, for the bottles, I mean, just like any other Hawas bottle, I mean, I think these Hawas bottles are definitely some of the best looking bottles from any sort of like Middle Eastern brand. I remember back in the day when I bought the original Hawas, probably back in like 2017 or something like that. That was definitely what kind of drew me to, actually look at this, the Hawas, fragrance, was just the way that the bottle looked. And so you have that here, even still with these newer fragrances. So with this one, you kind of have like a gradient sort of style bottle, where it's like this, I guess you could say, kind of light sort of turquoise color down here at the bottom, or light bluish green. And then it kind of goes into like a black sort of color here at the top. You can still see through it on both sides, but you can definitely see through it a lot more, I would say, on the back. Whereas with the Hawas Cobra, this is just like a completely sort of, I don't know if it's black. I believe it's a black bottle. But yeah, you really can't see through this particular bottle. So you can't really see where your juice level is or anything like that. But basically you've got the Hawas for him on the front, and then the name of the fragrance. So Cobra and Malibu. Got the sticker down here at the bottom. And then on both caps, you have Rasasi. All right. So let's go over the notes, man. So the notes, starting off with Imagination. So with Imagination, in top notes, you get citron, Calabrian bergamot, Sicilian orange. And then in the mid, you get Tunisian neroli, Nigerian ginger, and Ceylon cinnamon. In the base, you get Chinese black tea, Ambroxan, Gaiac wood, and olibanum. Now for Cobra, you're gonna get in the top notes ginger, bergamot, and tangerine. In the mid, you get cinnamon, neroli, and green tea. And then in the base, you get musk, woodsy notes, and amber. All right, now for Le Beau, Le Parfum, that one in the top notes, you get pineapple, iris, ginger, and cypress. In the mid, you get coconut and woodsy notes. And then in the base, you get tonka bean, sandalwood, amber, and ambergris. Now for the Hawas Malibu, for this one, you get in the top notes pineapple, orange, and grapefruit. In the mid, you get amber, lavender, and orris. And then in the base, you get tonka bean, musk, patchouli, and cashmere. So this, the two fragrances, what I'll say is, initially when I saw the like the pictures, and then I eventually kind of saw like a note breakdown for these. This one I was not very excited about. The overall sort of Beau scent profile, I'm not like the biggest fan of it. I would say, for me, I like this, the Hawas Tropical, which is based on the Beau Paradise Garden. For me, out of all the different Beau fragrances that I've smelled, I think the Paradise Garden one definitely smells the best. So to me, it didn't make sense for them to release Hawas Tropical and then release this Hawas Malibu right after, where it's like, this is still very, very similar in some ways to, Hawas Tropical for sure. Not exactly the same, but I mean, I would say they're too similar to be in the same sort of Hawas line. So it didn't really make sense that they were releasing this after this. I felt like if you were gonna pick one fragrance from that Beau line, and you already picked the Beau Paradise Garden scent profile, why not just stick with that? Or at the very least, I guess, maybe wait a little bit longer, to release something like this. I don't know. It's just kind of like these two were released a little bit too close, to each other, in my opinion. And then for the imagination interpretation, for this one, I felt like, there was some excitement to be had for this fragrance, especially if this one was like the very best imagination interpretation out there. Like they completely like knocked it out the park. But I mean, at least for me so far, Cobra has been, I'm not going to say that it's a bad interpretation. It's better than most of the imagination interpretations that I've smelled. But it's like it's nothing really special at the same time, especially at this point. I think had this maybe come out probably a year and a half ago, then I think this one would get a lot more, sort of hype and praise for sure. But I feel like with them coming out with this now, and, we've got fragrances like Marwa from Arabiat Prestige. You've got like Game of Spades, Full House. You have Aqua Dubai from, Al Haramain. To me, this one just is a little bit too late, to be honest with you. Now, what I want to do is I want to start off with kind of going over the differences between Cobra and Imagination. So as far as the smell between these two, like I said, this one is not like the closest one that I've smelled to Imagination. When you first spray these two on, this definitely has a very nice opening to it. But I would say this, honestly, to me, it smells very kind of close to like Game of Spades, Full House. Just overall, I feel like it has more sweetness to it, the same way that Full House does. Obviously it's going to be a lot stronger than Imagination is, just like Full House is, at least for me anyway. So, I mean, that's definitely, one area where you could say where this does excel over Imagination is this definitely has noticeably more projection and strength than what Imagination does. But at the same time, Imagination to me, it still comes across as the more higher quality, more expensive, better smelling fragrance. And the reason I say that is, again, Cobra to me comes across more sweeter. It comes across as less watery, same way that, Game of Spades, Full House does. And definitely in the like the dry down of this fragrance, Cobra, I'm getting a lot more like cinnamon, I feel like, than I get like the tea and the ginger. The cinnamon is definitely is dialed way up in this fragrance for sure. And so that also kind of adds to like the sweetness as well. And I mean, I feel like I've gotten this same sort of feel from a lot of other like imagination interpretations that I've smelled over the last few years. So, I mean, I think really at this point, I'm kind of getting tired of the Louis Vuitton imagination interpretations. I would just say probably at this point, if you're looking for the exact same experience as imagination, I think you just have to buy imagination. Every other interpretation that I've smelled, even the ones that I've said are the best, they all have something that's different. They all kind of have a slightly different opening, or maybe the tea note in the dry down is not as it doesn't smell the same as what it does in imagination, or some of them don't have hardly any neroli in them. So I just think if you want this smell, you have to just buy a full bottle of this. Again, Marwa to me so far has been the best one, but Marwa has that really strange opening that I think will put a lot of people off. Whereas again, this one, the opening is pretty good, but it doesn't come across as watery and as natural smelling as what imagination does, in my opinion. All right. So yeah, those are the main differences really that I would say that I get from this. With that extra sort of cinnamon dry down that I get from this does to me smell noticeably cheaper than what imagination does. With imagination, I feel like I'm still getting like a combination of like those tart citruses, the neroli, the spices, and the tea all together, and sort of like a slightly ambery feel from imagination in the dry down. Whereas with this to me kind of smells like I don't know, kind of like a overly sort of sweetened and spiced tea, you could say, in the dry down. So you're not getting like much of any of that sort of like soapiness that you get from imagination. So I think really it just all kind of depends on your preference. Maybe if you don't like the soapier aspects of imagination, then Cobra might make a little bit more sense for you. But at least for me, I definitely I like imagination a lot more. So I would say I can still recommend this fragrance for sure. Especially if you get this one from vanityrfragrance.com. This is only what, $45, this and Malibu as well. I think that's cheaper really than just about anywhere else. So for $45, this is a very solid imagination interpretation. Like I said, I would definitely compare this to something like Game of Spades Full House for sure. I do think that Full House maybe is a little bit better, but Full House typically is like almost double the price as what this is. So this is still, again, a very solid interpretation for the price. I just think, again, I'm just kind of over the Louis Vuitton imagination interpretations that have come out. All right. So for the performance, like I said, performance on this is solid. So you're going to get that super beast mode, Hawas style performance that you get from all of their other fragrances for, at least like the first 3+ hours. So it is going to project pretty strongly. And, longevity wise, this is easily going to last, well over 10 to 12 hours or so. So this is a very, very beast mode, long lasting take on the scent profile. I just think that it lacks quality and it lacks some key sort of elements that imagination has that makes imagination. All right. So that's the performance on this one. As far as my closeness rating with this, I would say that Cobra is like around 80 to 85%, at best. So not again the worst, interpretation of imagination, but at the same time, definitely not the best. As for my overall rating on this I would say is easily probably like a 7.5 out of 10 is what I would give this one. So kind of like I would say around that same sort of areas like what I gave stuff like Army's Hectic, like I would say really you probably can't go wrong with either one of those, Hectic or this. It just all kind of depends on which one you want. Maybe if you're someone who has all the other Hawas fragrances in your collection, or if you prefer the bottle style this one more, then I would say go for this one. I know this one is definitely cheaper than what the Bujarami was. The Bujarami was like $60, I believe. Whereas again, if you get this one from Bandier, it's like 45. So I would definitely recommend the Hawas Cobra if you're looking for just a cheap kind of $40 to $50 interpretation of imagination. And maybe you don't like the opening of Marwa, then this is definitely one to look at for sure. All right. Now, as for Hawas Malibu, this one, like I said, I wasn't very enthused to pick this one up because I knew that it was based on another Beau fragrance, and the Beau Parfum, like I've smelled that one before. I don't have a sample of it, but it was okay. Like I didn't. It definitely was not a fragrance that I was looking for a interpretation of. I definitely wasn't looking to buy a bottle of it. It was just okay. And that's, the same thing that I would say really that I get with the Malibu. The main thing that I really don't care for when it comes to, this Le Parfum sort of scent profile is, I don't know, the way that the pineapple comes across in it is, it kind of comes across off of my skin almost smelling like piss, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's very strange. It's a combination of like a very sort of like overly ripened, super sweet pineapple mixed with, kind of like this coconut and iris type of feel, mixed with lavender, and I would say a slightly kind of like vanillic type of feel. I mean, I think this one is okay if you're a fan of the Beau scent profile just in general. Like if you really love the Beau line of flankers, then I think this is definitely one to look at. But if you're not really that much of a fan of Beau overall, I would say this one may be one that you would, possibly want to skip. Like I said, for me, I much more prefer the, Beau Paradise Garden scent profile, which is in, the Hawas Tropical. So, if it came down to me having to, just only pick one between these two, I would pick Hawas Tropical every time over Malibu for sure. Because to me, Malibu, at least in my opinion, is not necessarily a fragrance that you would want to wear like in the super warm weather, especially not here in Vegas when it's like, 105, 110, 115 degrees. This is not a fragrance that I would ever reach for during that time of the year because it just is a little bit too thick and sweet and cloying. Whereas, with the Hawas Tropical, even though this is still a very strong, diffusive, beast mode style fragrance, it's a lot more fresher. The texture of it is a little bit more lighter. It's not as dense. It comes across a lot more sort of tropical, whereas again, this kind of comes across more of sort of like I guess you could say like a fresh, fruity, sort of like spring and fall time type of scent, or even possibly, a freshie that you could wear like in the winter time as well. I think that's more so kind of what, Malibu kind of comes across, at least for me. It's definitely like a freshie that you could wear in more like cooler weather. Um, that's basically the best way for me to kind of describe Malibu. Um, you know, like I said, I think if you're someone who likes the LeBeau sort of scent profile in general, then I do think that you will still like this one. This will still be worth a pickup. Now, I think if you already have tropical, does it necessarily make sense for you to go out and buy Malibu too? It depends. I think if you are someone who kind of feels the same way about the two fragrances in terms of like when you would wear them, whereas tropical you feel like it's more so like your summertime scent, and Malibu would be more of like your cooler weather scent, then I do think that it probably does make sense for you to go out and pick this up. Especially like if you live in a climate where it is a lot more cooler for longer, and you do like to wear slightly more kind of like fresher, fruitier scents during those, winter or cooler months. So if you're not someone who just strictly sticks to like tobacco and vanilla and stuff like that, like really sort of resinous ambery types of scents in the wintertime, then maybe this might actually be a decent choice for you, for those types of months. But yeah, man, I mean, this one I would say is okay. I would say this was probably my least favorite Hawas release since like Hawas Black. And not, again, not to say that any of the Hawas releases have been bad releases. I just think that the time in which they've been released here recently, like the timing has just been off. It's just kind of been like way too late in my opinion. And I feel like what they're starting to do in terms of like cranking a lot of these fragrances out is in my opinion, they're kind of like chipping away at the excitement for the Hawas line. The Hawas line to me, I would say really, I would say after like Hawas Ice, for the most part, has kind of been, in my opinion, a little mid. I know definitely for sure there's a lot of stuff that they've been releasing that's kind of for everybody, and they've definitely been more so kind of like just going after like straight up interpretations of other mostly designer fragrances for the most part. But I don't know, I just don't necessarily like the direction of where the Hawas line is going. I guess at the end of the day, they must be making a lot of money though with these fragrances, because they're, like I said, they're cranking them out pretty fast now. So that's just my take on these, man. As for the performance on the Malibu, I would say Malibu, this one is another really long lasting super beast mode style fragrance. So you're going to get well over an arm's length, I would say, for at least, 3+ hours and well over 10 to 12 hours of total longevity. So, pretty standard for the Hawas line for the most part. As for the closeness rating, I can't really give this one a closeness rating, only because, like I said, I don't have a sample to do like a side-by-side comparison of this with. I tried to buy one, but I actually bought the EDT and not the Le Parfum for Le Beau. So, I didn't have the exact same fragrance to do a comparison with. But I mean, from what I remember, the Le Parfum smelling like, this did smell pretty similar for the most part. So, I mean, again, I don't want to give this one a closeness rating, but it does smell very, very close. And then as for my overall rating on this one, I'm just not a fan of the scent profile for Le Beau Le Parfum that much, hardly at all. So I would say this is like a 6 out of 10 for me. It may be higher for you, especially if you like that scent profile. But like I said, I much more prefer the Hawas Tropical over the, or I'm sorry, the Paradise Garden scent profile over the Le Beau Le Parfum. All right. So that's my take pretty much on these fragrances, man. I hope that Hawas in their future releases can start to make maybe some original fragrances, or, like some really, I would say, untapped sort of niche fragrances. I mean, it seems like really the only niche fragrance that they really gone after so far have been, Imperial Valley and Hachivat, which, like I said, the Hachivat and the Hawas Black, I felt like that just came out way too late. It came out after everybody else had already kind of done Hachivat scent profiles, and felt like the Hachivat scent profile now has kind of, it's lost its sort of popularity in my opinion. So that's why I just really didn't care for that particular release. So I mean, hopefully they can release some stuff that is a lot more new, that maybe a lot more people don't necessarily know about, and they can kind of introduce, more people to more kind of niche style fragrances that are, affordable and in this really, really nice presentation that is the Hawas fragrance bottles. All right. So that's my take on these two fragrances, man. Definitely let me know in the comments what you all think about these two fragrances. Also, I have links in the description to where you can pick these up. And if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Scents. I'll see you on the next video.